You ever have one of those moments where you're standing in a room full of people and suddenly feel like you don't belong there? Like every eye is on you, judging you, tearing you apart without even knowing who you are? That's exactly how I felt the night of my sister-in-law's engagement party. My name's Rachel. And trust me, I wasn't some random guest sneaking in. I was family. Or at least, I thought I was. But the way they treated me that night, you'd think I was hired staff carrying trays of champagne instead of the wife of the bride's only brother. The party was everything you'd imagine a luxury engagement to be. Crystal chandeliers dripping from the ceiling, a string quartet playing softly in the corner, servers dressed in black and white uniforms gliding across the marble floors with silver trays. The place smelled like roses and money. Guests arrived in designer dresses and tailored suits, snapping photos like they were on the cover of some lifestyle magazine. I had put on my best dress that night. It wasn't designer, God knows I can't afford anything with a 4-digit price tag, but it was classy. A soft navy blue number I bought after saving up for weeks. I had my hair curled, my makeup done, and for once, I felt like maybe I could fit into a crowd like this, but the second I walked in, I noticed it. The stares. The whispers, who's she with? Someone muttered. I thought she was staff, another voice said behind me, followed by a laugh. I tried to brush it off, pretended I didn't hear, but it stuck like a knife in my chest. I clung to my husband's arm, Daniel, my rock, but even he seemed distracted, swept up in the glamour of his sister's big night, and then it happened. The moment that still burns in my memory. A woman in a glittering gown, diamond earrings big enough to pay my rent for a year, approached me. With a smug smile, she held out her empty champagne flute and said, loud enough for everyone around to hear, "Excuse me, could you refill this?" I think the staff missed me. Laughter. Actual laughter rippled through the group standing nearby. My cheeks flushed hot, my throat tight, but before I could even correct her, someone else chimed in. "Oh, I thought she was housekeeping staff too. She's got that plain look, you know?" Plain, that word cut deeper than anything else. I wanted to scream, to tell them who I was, to shove the truth in their smug faces. But instead, I froze. My husband wasn't even there. He'd wandered off to greet relatives, leaving me stranded in the middle of a glittering ballroom with people pointing, laughing, whispering, and here's the worst part, my sister-in-law saw it happen. She looked right at me from across the room, saw me standing there with my dignity shredded, and she smiled. Not a comforting smile, no, a cold, satisfied one. That's when I realized it wasn't an accident. This was her show, her stage, and I was the punchline. I excused myself quietly, holding my head high even though my insides were burning. I found the nearest restroom, locked myself in, and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Mascara perfect, lipstick flawless, curls still bouncing around my shoulders. I didn't look like a housekeeper. I looked like a woman who was done being humiliated. That night, something inside me snapped. They wanted to call me the help. They wanted to laugh at me, drag me down in front of a room full of people dripping with money and diamonds. Fine, let them, but I promised myself one thing as I stood there gripping the sink, staring into my own eyes. They'd regret underestimating me because I wasn't going to cry about it. I wasn't going to shrink into the shadows. I was going to turn their cruelty into my power. And when I finally walked out of that party, I didn't just walk away embarrassed, I walked away with a plan. Asterisk. The next morning, I woke up with that same pit in my stomach. You know, the kind that doesn't go away after sleep? Like the shame and anger have just been simmering all night waiting for you to open your eyes? Yeah, that was me. Daniel rolled over, kissed my forehead, and said, "Last night was amazing, wasn't it?" I just stared at him. Amazing? For who? Him? His sister? Everyone except me? I wanted to blurt it out right there, how I was mocked, how people called me a housekeeper, how his precious sister let it happen. But the words caught in my throat. Because the truth? Deep down, I wasn't even sure he'd take my side. Family runs thick, and I knew exactly where his loyalties lay. So I smiled faintly and said, "Yeah, amazing," but inside, I was screaming the entire day. Flashes of the night before replayed in my head like a cruel movie. The laughter, the smug looks, the way my sister-in-law smirked like she'd finally gotten the upper hand, and then it hit me. That's what this was all about. She never liked me. From the moment Daniel and I got serious, she treated me like some outsider who wasn't good enough for her family. Too average. Too plain. Not polished enough for their world of luxury and status. Last night wasn't random, it was intentional. A staged humiliation at her luxury engagement party. Her way of putting me in my place. Well, she succeeded. But only for one night. By afternoon, my embarrassment had hardened into something sharper. Determination. I pulled out my laptop and started digging. Not into shopping sites or self-help blogs, no. Into her world. Her fiancé's company, her social media. The carefully curated picture of perfection she presented to everyone, and guess what? Perfect people don't exist. And perfect lives? They always have cracks. I found out her fiance's company had a few lawsuits brewing, small ones. Nothing front page worthy, but enough to raise an eyebrow if the right people saw them. I found pictures from a trip she claimed was work-related that were, let's just say, very unprofessional. Piece by piece, I started to realize she wasn't untouchable. Far from it. And while I wasn't about to go nuclear just yet, the seed was planted. If she wanted to humiliate me publicly, I was going to return the favor, only worse. That night, as Daniel scrolled on his phone beside me, I sat there in silence, my mind spinning with ideas. Revenge isn't just about payback. It's about timing, precision making. Sure, the knife twists exactly where it hurts most. She thought I was plain, she thought I was powerless, but what she didn't know is that I don't stay down for long, and one day soon, when she least expected it, I was going to flip the script. Not by screaming, not by fighting, but by exposing her, piece by piece, until the world saw her the way she tried to make them see me. I closed my laptop, turned off the light, and whispered to myself in the dark, you wanted a show? Fine, I'll give you one. Asterisk. The funny thing about revenge is that it rarely looks like the movies. There were no dramatic monologues, no cinematic slow-mo as I flipped a switch. Most of the time it looked like small, boring, administrative things, emails, phone calls, carefully timed posts. It looked like patience. My first move was almost embarrassingly mundane. I started reconnecting with people I'd met over the years, vendors, photographers, caterers, even a few of the venue staff. Nothing flashy, just polite messages. Hey, hope you're well. Quick question about last weekend's event, can you confirm something for me? Most of them didn't think anything of it. To them I was Rachel, Daniel's wife. That was the disguise I used, and it worked. One of the vendors I contacted was private someone who'd worked dozens of high-end events in the city. He replied quickly, and our exchange felt casual at first, until I asked the right question. Do you remember who signed the final contracts for the venue? I need to double-check a line item. A pause. Then, yeah, it wasn't the bride's family, it was someone else. He didn't know. He just handed me a thread. Threads pull. You pull them, and they unravel things. The more I nudged, the more I saw. There were shortcuts in the planning that night. A discount that wasn't documented properly. A supplier who'd been paid off the books. A security guard whose time card never matched the cameras. Nothing illegal on the surface, but a sloppy tapestry. The kind of sloppiness that becomes a stain if someone notices it's there. I wasn't in the business of ruining lives. I wanted balance. If she wanted to humiliate me in front of her crowd, I wanted to expose the fact that her crowd wasn't as flawless as it pretended to be. Perception, after all, is everything. Make the perfect picture shake, and the cracks become visible. So I started placing little, carefully worded comments in places they'd be noticed. A private message to a blogger who loved exposing luxury hypocrisy, a casual photo I'd taken just a sliver of an invoice uploaded to a throwaway account, with a snarky caption about what happens behind the scenes of luxury events. Nothing overt, nothing traceable back to me. Just BREADCRUMBS. And then I used another tool that I'd always underestimated: people. The staff, the servers, the assistants who got walked over and never thanked. I didn't persuade them to lie. I asked them to tell the truth, quietly, in the right places. I promised anonymity, and in some cases, I offered to help cover small legal consultation fees if they were worried. Nobody wanted a war. They wanted fairness. Many of them were relieved someone finally asked and listened. One of the assistants told me a story that made me both laugh and feel sick. They'd caught the bride's closest friend sneaking bottles out of the premium open bar into designer handbags to take home. It's a party favor, the assistant had joked to herself when she saw it, but the more she looked, the more ridiculous it seemed. Shrugged rules for the glamorous, strict rules for the help. The double standard made my skin crawl. As these tiny truths collected, an invoice here, a side deal there, a security guard's vague recollection, the quiet blogger started to write. Not a hit piece at first, just a curious thread about what modern luxury really means. The post got shared. The comments spilled into other platforms. People began to poke at the curated image with the natural curiosity of strangers who enjoy watching reputations wobble. Meanwhile, the family dynamics were my next train. I started to look for cracks in the family facade. Social media is a goldmine for that. Old comments, photos with strange tags. A brother's late-night rant that had since been deleted, things that hinted at tensions, old wounds. No big scandals, just human flaws. And human flaws make perfect stories when you present them as context. Then came my boldest move. I sent an anonymous RSVP to a small, Exclusive after party being thrown by one of the family's most influential friends, a night meant for inner circle gossip and tone setting. The invitation included a guest list. I studied it. I saw the names who mattered, the influencers, the donors, the women who decided who belonged in that social stratum. I also saw a thread of people who'd once been on the outside but were invited for optics. On the night of that after party, I didn't go. Of course not. I stayed home. But I made sure certain people couldn't help but notice the receipts and messages I'd quietly shared online. A tip to a journalist about odd wiring in the engagement billing. An old vendor's offhand comment about a comped guest list. It was like letting air into a sealed balloon. What I wanted wasn't to watch their world collapse in a single devastating moment. I wanted discomfort. I wanted them to feel the slow unease you get when a perfect glass of water starts to collect a few bubbles at the edge. It's subtle, but it's persistent. And in their world, persistent anxiety is poison. Grandiosity can't survive the nagging voice that whispers, "Is this real?" The kicker came a week later. The blogger's thread pulled in a local lifestyle magazine writer who asked a few pointed questions publicly about how much of luxury is curated and how much is real. The writer reached out to my former in-laws, not to me. But the questions were specific enough that the family felt cornered. Their PR person drafted a statement and pushed it out, calming words about transparency and celebrating with loved ones. It was hollow. It showed more panic than calm. To the right eyes, it read like a confession proving guilt. I watched all this happen from my living room, not because I enjoyed seeing people embarrassed, but because there's a justice in truth. For so long, I'd carried the weight of being dismissed in rooms I belonged to. Watching those curated images start to show real-life effort and compromise felt like reclaiming something I'd lost. And the most surprising thing? Daniel started to notice the change in tone around their family. He came home one night, scrolling through his feed, puzzled. "Do you see this?" he asked, half amused, half concerned. I could see the worry creep onto his face. When he realized the engagement's shine was dulling in public view, he looked at me differently, then less like someone who'd been detached by convenience. More like someone who suddenly understood there were consequences to being complacent. That was when I realized the ripple had reached the people I didn't want to hurt. My husband. He wasn't complicit in the public humiliation. He'd been distracted. But he was part of the family and now part of the fallout. It complicated things, sure. There were moments I wondered if my anger had gone too far, but listening to the jumbled news, watching the slow unspooling of perfection, I also felt something else, strength. Not because I'd pried at their gloss, but because I'd reclaimed my power quietly. It was vindication without the noise, a subtler, smarter version of justice. So I kept going. Small acts, precise nudges, and the willingness to listen to the quiet truths of people who'd been overlooked. It wasn't explosive. It wasn't immediate. But it was effective. By the end of that month, the engagement was no longer the untouchable event it once was. There were questions, whispers, and a mild scandal brewing that no PR statement could fix completely. People at work started giving me subtle looks, respectful nods from those who had been watching. The woman who called me a housekeeper that night stopped posting her curated selfies for a while. The family's perfect timeline started to look like a timeline with missing frames. I sat back. Not triumphant, but steady. The world was starting to level. And while my plan wasn't finished, the balance of power had shifted enough to make me feel alive again. The first call came on a Wednesday morning, just as I was pouring coffee. Daniel's phone buzzed across the kitchen counter. I wasn't trying to pry, but the name on the screen glared up at me. "Mom," he answered. And I listened to his side of the conversation while stirring cream into my mug. "Wait, what do you mean it's in print?" "No, I didn't see it yet." "Yeah, I'll check." His tone tightened with every word, his hand raking through his hair in that anxious way he had after he hung up. He pulled up an article on his tablet and slid it toward me. There it was. Bold headline across a lifestyle magazine site, "Luxury Engagement or Luxury Illusion." Behind the curtain of Chicago's most talked about party, my sister-in-law's smiling photo filled the page, her sequin gown glittering under lights, arm hooked around her fiancé. But below the photo, the article shifted tone. It dissected everything I'd carefully set in motion: vendors cutting corners, exclusive wines that were actually wholesale knockoffs, whispered rumors of bills being smoothed over and cash. To the casual reader, it wasn't damning. To people in their world, it was gasoline on dry grass. Daniel scrolled, face hardening. "This is bad," he muttered. "You know how her family cares about appearances. This isn't going to go away." I sipped my coffee, forcing my expression neutral. Inside, though, I felt that sharp, electric satisfaction. This wasn't just gossip. It was exposure within hours. The engagement party had turned from a shimmering fairy tale into a punchline across social feeds. A TikTok creator stitched the magazine headline with clips of the couple to a soundtrack of someone laughing hysterically. Comments piled on, "So that's what luxury looks like? Housekeepers worked harder than these people did on their dream night." Housekeepers. The word struck me like a bell. That insult, that single careless dismissal, was now echoing back at them, weaponized by strangers who didn't even know the original context. By Thursday night, the fallout got uglier. A catering company publicly distanced themselves, claiming unprofessional misrepresentation. One of the bridesmaids, the one who had snickered loudest at me, posted a rambling Instagram story, defending her friend, which only added fuel to the fire. Screenshots spread everywhere. And then came the part I hadn't fully anticipated. Daniel. At first, he tried to laugh it off. But soon, people at his job started making jokes. Little digs about the luxury scandal. His boss pulled him aside, asking if his family could manage their reputation issues discreetly. That's when the cracks started to show in him. He turned to me one night, his voice lower, tired. "Rachel, this is spiraling. I know you've been angry, I get that. But are you involved in this?" My stomach twisted. He wasn't accusing me outright, he was scared. Scared of losing status, scared of being dragged into his family's chaos. I met his eyes. "What makes you think I'd waste my energy on them?" My tone was calm, but in my chest, guilt warred with pride. Because the truth was, I hadn't wasted my energy. I'd invested it, and the return was paying off better than I could have dreamed. But I also realized something important. My revenge wasn't just theirs anymore. Daniel was caught in the ripple. And unlike his sister, he hadn't earned it. Still, part of me hardened. This was the cost of silence. He had stood by when they belittled me, laughed at me, called me a housekeeper in front of strangers. He hadn't spoken up then. And now, when the world was finally laughing at them, maybe it was fair that he felt the sting too. The next weekend, I went out alone, something I hadn't done in months. I slipped into a downtown cafe where a friend of mine, Emily, was waiting. She had been following the unfolding drama like everyone else, but unlike others. She knew the backstory. "You're not going to tell me this isn't you," Emily said. Leaning across the table, I smiled faintly, tracing a finger around the rim of my cup. "Do I look like someone who has that kind of power?" She laughed, sharp and knowing. "Rachel, you look like someone who finally got tired of being walked over." Her words settled in me. That was it, wasn't it? I wasn't destroying anyone. I was dismantling a lie. And if they were smart, they'd use this as a wake-up call. But I knew them. They weren't smart when it came to humility. They would claw, deny, and spin. Which meant my work wasn't done. By the time I got home, another bomb had dropped. A leaked video clip someone at the party had filmed my sister-in-law berating a server over champagne being too warm. The clip spread like wildfire. Hashtag sprouted overnight, hashtag champagnegate, hashtag luxury fake, hashtag engagement fail. And in every thread, I saw the echo of that night. People calling her entitled, out of touch, even cruel. The narrative had flipped, and it wasn't stopping. Daniel slammed his phone on the table. "She's losing control of this, Rachel. We're all losing control of this." His voice cracked with frustration. But me, I sat quietly, watching the flames spread across their perfect world, and whispered inside my head, "This is what power feels like." The revenge wasn't just working. It was growing, alive, and unstoppable. And deep down, I wasn't sure if I even wanted to stop it anymore. The scandal had taken on a life of its own. What started as whispers in an article and a few viral clips now dominated feeds across Chicago, and even made its way to national gossip blogs. I couldn't walk past a cafe without seeing someone scrolling on their phone, laughing at the latest meme about the luxury illusion. But here's the thing about revenge: once it catches fire, you don't always get to control where the flames spread. On Monday morning, Daniel's sister Jessica showed up at our house unannounced. She was still dressed to the nines, hair perfectly curled, makeup flawless. But her eyes were bloodshot. She stormed in without so much as a hello and dropped into a chair at our dining table. "You have got to help me," she said, voice cracking. "They're destroying me, Rachel. Every hour there's some new post, some new rumor. Sponsors are backing out of our wedding partnerships, and Evans," she stopped herself, biting her lip. "Evans' firm is asking him to step back from client-facing roles. This isn't just embarrassing anymore. It's money. It's our future." I sat across from her, folding my hands in my lap. For the first time, she didn't look like the untouchable golden girl. She looked human. Fragile even. Still, I remembered that night. Her laughter. Her words. "Oh, she's just the housekeeper." So I asked her plainly, "Why are you telling me this?" She blinked. "Because you're family. Because Daniel listens to you. Because I need someone who doesn't want to see me fail." The irony almost made me laugh. Didn't want to see her fail? I'd spent weeks engineering her failure. But watching her now, part of me hesitated. Not out of pity, but from a question gnawing in my mind: if she already thinks the world is tearing her apart, do I really need to keep pushing? Before I could answer, Daniel came in, briefcase in hand, and froze at the sight of her. "Jess, what are you doing here?" She broke down then, burying her face in her hands, sobbing. And Daniel, my husband, her brother, rushed to her side without hesitation. He rubbed her shoulder, whispering, "We'll fix this. We'll figure something out." And that was the moment the first real guilt hit me like a punch to the stomach. I had wanted justice. I had wanted them to feel humiliated like I had. But watching my husband cradle his sister while she wept over a mess I had orchestrated, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I'd gone too far. But then, later that night, I got the message that burned away every ounce of guilt. It was an anonymous DM, no name, no profile picture, just a screenshot. It showed Jessica at the engagement, in the middle of laughing with her friends. And beneath it was a line she had said that I'd almost forgotten, except now. It had been caught on someone's phone mic and was circulating online, her voice. Crystal clear: "Rachel? Oh, don't mind her. She's basically the help." It hit me all over again. The sting, the humiliation, the way the room had chuckled at my expense. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't exaggerated. She had actually reduced me to nothing in front of dozens of people. And now the world could hear it for themselves. The clip was spreading fast. The comments were brutal, so she really did say it. "Imagine humiliating your sister-in-law like this on camera. Trash behavior. No wonder their luxury life is crashing down." By midnight, the audio had been remixed into memes, songs, and parodies. A DJ even turned it into a beat, and it was trending on TikTok. And just like that, my hesitation vanished. This wasn't me destroying her. This was her own cruelty amplified. All I had done was tilt the spotlight in her direction. The rest? That was karma. The next day, Jessica didn't show up at work. By Wednesday, she'd locked her social media. By Friday, Evan's law firm announced he was taking a leave of absence to focus on family matters. Daniel paced the living room, tense, muttering about how everything was unraveling too fast. "This isn't just her problem anymore. It's mine. People are connecting me to it. Do you understand what that means for my career?" I looked at him, steady. "Do you understand what it meant for me when your family called me a housekeeper? When you stayed silent?" He opened his mouth, then shut it. For once, he had no comeback. That night, as he slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The power of revenge was intoxicating. I could feel it humming through me, sharp and alive. But the cost was rising. The question now wasn't could I stop? It was, would I? Because deep down, I wasn't sure anymore if walking away empowered meant leaving quietly, or burning the whole foundation of their world until there was nothing left to rebuild. And for the first time, I realized I was dangerously close to enjoying the fire more than the freedom. Asterisk: by the time autumn rolled into Chicago, the engagement had become a symbol of humiliation, not celebration. The once golden couple couldn't escape it every time they stepped outside. They risked someone pointing, whispering, or worse, filming. Jessica tried to put on a brave face, but the cracks were impossible to hide. She'd lost brand partnerships, friends were distancing themselves, and Evan's career was hanging by a thread. The dream wedding was postponed indefinitely, and me? I had never felt more in control of my life, but control is a dangerous thing. Once you have it, you start wondering, how much more can I take? The final push came at a family dinner. Daniel had insisted we all meet to clear the air. His parents, Jessica, Evan, and us crowded around a glossy oak table in his parents' too-perfect dining room. The atmosphere was thick. No one made eye contact. Finally, Jessica slammed her fork down, her voice trembling with anger. "Is this what you wanted, Rachel? For everyone to laugh at me? For me to be the joke of the city?" All eyes turned to me. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. I leaned forward slightly, my voice steady. "What I wanted was respect. One night, you all stood there and let them call me a housekeeper. You laughed at me. Do you have any idea what that feels like?" Silence. Her father cleared his throat, awkward. "Now, Rachel, I'm sure she didn't mean." "She meant it," I cut in. "You all meant it. And for years, you've treated me like I don't belong. Like I married up into this family and should just be grateful to breathe your air. But here's the truth." My voice sharpened. "You built your world on arrogance. All I did was pull back the curtain and let people see it for what it really is." Jessica's eyes blazed, but she had no words. Evan's jaw clenched. Daniel just looked between us, torn, realizing the rift between his wife and his family had grown into an abyss. For a long moment, no one moved. The tension was so sharp I could hear my own breathing. Then, slowly, I pushed my chair back and stood. "I don't need an apology," I said. "I don't need your acceptance. What I've finally found is the strength to stop begging for a seat at your table. And with that, I walked out. The night air hit me like a cleansing wave. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying their judgment on my shoulders. I wasn't the outsider anymore. I wasn't the housekeeper, I was the one who chose my worth. In the weeks that followed, the scandal burned itself out. Another story replaced theirs in the gossip cycle. People moved on, as they always do. But the family never fully recovered. Jessica stayed in hiding, Evan struggled at work, and Daniel had choices to make about which side he stood on. As for me, I found new circles, new friends, and new confidence. When people asked me about that infamous party, I didn't deny what happened. I told them the truth. And every time I did, I felt lighter because revenge isn't just about watching someone else fall. Sometimes it's about finally standing tall. And that's what I did. Walked away from their glittering illusion, not broken, not bitter, but empowered. Forever done with their games. Forever free.